Welcome back to Legitimate Targets, everybody. I hope you're all having a great day. I've got a very special guest joining us on today's episode. Miko Peled is an author, an activist, and a speaker who advocates for the Palestinian human life, for a single state where all rights are respected. And he has a very unique perspective because his grandfather was one of the founders of Israel. His father was a famous general. His sister knew Benjamin Netanyahu, and he continues to stand for Palestinians and human rights today. So, Mr. Pele, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing?
Of course. I'm doing well. I'll add one more thing is that now I founded and I operate the Palestine House of Freedom here in Washington, D.C. And that's where I'm speaking to you from today. So that's the last line in my bio.
Very good. What are you guys doing there right now?
Well, we created the space with an effort to create a purely Palestine-centered space in Washington, D.C. We're on Capitol Hill. We're just a few blocks from the Capitol. We've got the Palestinian flag. We've got the name Palestine House of Freedom on Pennsylvania Avenue. We have a large space here. So we've been here for about a year now. So first of all and foremost was to have an unapologetically Palestine space where the message is liberating all of Palestine from the river to the sea and creating a democracy with equal rights, like you said, for everyone who lives there. And then as a nonprofit, we're education based. And so we take the most robust meaning of the word education. And the objective is to demonstrate that the vision of a free Palestine, free Palestine on all of historic Palestine from the river to the sea with equal rights is a hopeful, optimistic vision. The other side has taken it. Well, they've taken all excuse me, they've kind of branded everything that has to do with Palestine as negative. So if you say river to the sea, it's negative. If you say free Palestine, it's negative. And it's caught on. So the objective is to demonstrate through all the tools that we have that this is it's actually the only really hopeful, optimistic vision for Palestine. And using the language that is often used here in Washington, D.C., they talk about stability and democracy and peace and so forth. Well, that is the way to democracy and stability and peace in the region. The problem is that in this country, everyone's invested in the obstacle to these things, which is the apartheid state. So as long as everybody's invested in investing in the apartheid state, we're not going to see that hopeful vision of a free Palestine. We're not going to see stability, peace, and so on. So it's a tough challenge, but we have a lot of allies. We're working with all the different groups here. There are a lot of smart people on our side. And that's really what we're trying to do. And the fact that we're so close to the Capitol, we're right on Capitol here in Washington, is a huge advantage, of course.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they haven't tried to label you as some domestic terrorist cell yet or something like that. It's crazy what we're witnessing now, really, with this Trump administration and how they're starting to attack people for just saying exactly what you're saying. But working off that, I want to ask you, after the assassinations of Said Hassan Nasrallah, Syed Safieddin, and Ismail Haniyeh, there was a lot of people who started to look at the facts on the ground and kind of say maybe everything that's happened since October 7th is actually having a negative result for the Palestinian resistance. But today it seems like, when I look at it, maybe we're closer than we've ever been to having a Palestinian state and these Israeli war criminals being held accountable. Where do you think we're at today?
Well, I think the events of October 7th created a reality that is irreversible. And it has pushed the agenda of a free Palestine, far forward more than anybody could have anticipated. This relatively small group of fighters that came out of one of the poorest and most surveilled and most oppressed areas in the world managed to completely shake up if not paralyzed, the apartheid state. It's nothing that no one was ever been able to do before. No military power, no political, nothing was able to do what they did. And all these months, almost 2 years later, the apartheid state has not recovered. So they ripped off this, the Scotch tape, if you will, of this thing that used to be an Israeli society, a pretense of a society, which it never was. So everybody's at each other's throats because of the support they're getting from southern Lebanon and from Yemen. The settlers all over the country can't go back to their settlements. The economy is in shambles because the port of Eilat has been all but shut down because of the Yemeni forces' siege in Bab el-Mandeb. And the sense of security, of this false sense of security and entitlement that Israelis had, is gone. The military has shown itself to be incompetent. This massive intelligence apparatus that people always admire and like to make movies about and adore is shown to be incompetent, not for the first time. But this time it was more devastating than ever. All the different agencies within the apartheid state are at each other's throats. The judiciary, the executive branch, the House of Representatives, the Knesset, people are at each other's throats. Everybody's against everybody. And so I agree. I think that this has pushed the agenda of a free Palestine much farther than anybody would have ever anticipated. Granted, at a huge cost. I mean, Palestinians have paid an enormous cost and will continue to pay enormous costs. But it brought the fact that there's an agenda, that the agenda for the Zionists is genocide front and center. Until now, or I should say before the Zionist monstrous response to October 7, people were debating whether or not there's genocide. Me and many others have been saying it's genocide for a very long time, because if you look at the definition of the crime of genocide and you compare it to what the Zionists have been doing for almost 100 years, it's almost a perfect match. Now it's even an absolute perfect match. Now I think they've exceeded. I don't think the people who described the crime of genocide back after World War II ever imagined anything this horrible. So yes, it's definitely raised the issue, made it front and center, and I do think we're much closer than we ever were as a result of that.
If Western nations begin to recognize Palestinian statehood for the first time, what sort of practical implications do you think might arise? What do you think that would mean for those living in Gaza, those living in the West Bank, and what do you think it would cause Israeli authorities to do? I mean, they're already crashing out, but how might they respond?
Well, the two things here that I think it's important to clarify: the idea that we espouse, and we're echoing. Really, we're just echoing the voices from Palestine. All of Palestine is a single country. There's no the West Bank, Gaza. All these definitions that were created by the Zionists and by the West are really irrelevant. There's one Palestine. It is from the river to the sea. In the north, it borders with Syria and Lebanon. In the south, with Egypt and the Gulf of Aqaba. That's Palestine. Now, we've seen over the years these Western and other nations recognize the state of Palestine. It's done nothing for Palestinians. Only did is it legitimize what's known as the Palestinian Authority, which represents no one respects, and collaborates very closely with the with the occupation, with the apartheid state, with the different arms of the apartheid state, intelligence mechanisms and security mechanism and so forth. So these recognitions are not only meaningless, I think they're harmful, because they legitimize the wrong thing. And they kind of give a sense to the countries that do recognize this thing that doesn't exist, as though they've done something positive, as though they've helped the Palestinians somehow. Well, we recognize the Palestinian state. It's very safe for Western countries to do it because it's meaningless. So they can say they're doing something for Palestine and at the same time not do anything, which is exactly how they like to operate. The right thing to do would be to recognize that there's an apartheid state that's been occupying and destroying Palestine for almost 8 decades. that there's a genocide that's going on and that needs to stop, that the apartheid state needs to be dismantled to allow for a free Palestine with equal rights, where people will finally be allowed to live as normal people without all this violence. And there needs to be a guarantee for the safety and security of the Palestinian people. They're being killed, they're being slaughtered, and there's no recourse. There's nobody for them to turn to. So those are the things. If the different countries around the world wanted to do something significant, that would be the declaration. That's what needs to be recognized.
Do you think it just seems like there's a political corner that everyone is stuck in right now, and that is, if you're a third party country, how do you tell Palestinians who are living in in Gaza or in the West Bank, how do you tell them that one leader is the leader or not the leader? You know what I'm saying? Like Russia and China, they did this 14 Palestinian organization coalition where they came up with their post-genocide plan of governance, plan of action. And Mahmoud Abbas is still the man that has to actually begin action to mobilize that plan, but he's not going to do anything. So how do countries address that issue of saying we need to move forward, but Mahmoud Abbas is not going to be the man in charge?
The way to move forward is to bring down the apartheid state first. Mm-hmm. The apartheid prisons are packed with Palestinian leaders that, if there were elections tomorrow, would get their people's votes. Mahmoud Abbas represents no one, was voted by no one, was elected by no one. He was appointed by the Israelis and the Americans. He works for them. And not to mention the fact that he has no connection whatsoever to millions of Palestinians who live in what is known as 1948 Palestine. Certainly not the people in Gaza. Certainly not the millions of Palestinians who live in refugee camps outside of Palestine. So it's a myth. The first thing that needs to be done is in my view, is massive sanctions against the apartheid state to bring it down. Then the Gaza concentration camp should be liberated. The ghettos of what is known today as the West Bank, but really just a bunch of different ghettos in this area, again, that Israel defined as the West Bank, but millions of Palestinians living in ghettos in that area need to be liberated and opened up. The prisons need to be opened up so that these political prisoners are liberated or free. And then free elections, one person, one vote elections need to be established, need to be called, and give people time to organize politically, to organize political parties, and have elections. Then you will see who are the people that represent the Palestinian people. Right now, we're in this strange reality that all people can think of is Fatah and Hamas, as though that is the entire scope of the Palestinian political world. That's nonsense. If tomorrow morning the apartheid state was dismantled, prisoners were freed, the Gaza ghetto, the Gaza concentration camp was liberated, and so on, you would have new political parties. You would have, there are many courageous, brilliant political leaders languishing in the apartheid jails for decades, some of them. Now you have a political reality that you can move forward with. The problem is that these forces, like the Chinese, the Russians, everybody is still stuck in the two-state solution construct, which legitimizes the apartheid state. That's what people need to break away from. There is no scenario on earth in which the two-state solution is either, viable or even justified. It has no virtues. There are no virtues to the two-state solution. It's not morally right. It doesn't solve the problem. It does not allow for a free Palestine, and it is impossibility because it assumes that there can be a Zionist apartheid state alongside some kind of a Palestinian state. It's madness. It's absolute ludicrous, So again, I go back to the beginning. These major players that you mentioned and others need to impose severe sanctions, a no-fly zone, a complete arms embargo, bring the apartheid state to its knees so that it collapses, just like apartheid in South Africa and other regimes around the world, and then allow for real elections to take place so the Palestinian voices are heard, including those, who are languishing in refugee camps in abject poverty and suffering all around Palestine. And then you put together the mechanisms to allow them to return. So it's a full package. To try to go back to this nonsense of a two-state solution construct, which does nothing but legitimize the apartheid state, and say, well, that is how we're going to solve this, is ridiculous. October 7th demonstrated very clearly, if the previous 75 years didn't demonstrate already, that that's an impossibility. It's never going to happen. So what is realistic? What can we do moving forward? What have we learned from Palestinians? What are Palestinians telling you? What has October 7th told us? It's that we need to move beyond that into a whole new construct to see Palestine in its entirety, from the river to the sea, all of Palestine, including the millions of Palestinians of 1948, the millions of Palestinians that are in the refugee camps and so on. Now you have yourself a real possible solution that can actually move things forward.
Do you think that a move such as kicking Israel out of the United Nations General Assembly could possibly facilitate further action by governments to apply sanctions and to move beyond this box of a two-state solution?
Sure, but something like this doesn't happen in a vacuum. So, you've got the Olympics, you've got FIFA, and you've got all these other, athletic and sporting, spaces where they're allowed to participate. You have academic spaces where they're allowed to participate. You have cultural spaces that are allowed to participate. You have the diplomatic sphere, where all these diplomatic missions all over the world. All of that needs to be dealt with. That is what boycott means. Mm-hmm. I always tell the story. Fathi Nourin is an Algerian athlete that in the 2021 Olympics, in Tokyo Olympics, refused to compete against a member of the apartheid team. He's a 21, 22-year-old athlete. He gave his whole life to his sport, and in the most important moment of his career in the Olympics, he said no. He was kicked out of the Olympics. He was kicked out of the World Judo Federation. He can no longer participate. He completely gave up his career. So we, of course, admire him, and he was received back home as a hero. But it wasn't supposed to be up to him. It's not for a young man like that to risk his career. The Olympic Committee should not allow the apartheid team to participate. You see, so it's up to these big institutions, and it's up to us, of course, to demand it, and to apply pressure, that this regime cannot have this apartheid regime cannot have its teams participate. And this goes across the board, any field, any area, any sphere, any space that you can imagine. Like I said, cultural, political, diplomatic, sporting events, and so on and so forth. It has to be across the board. That is how you bring it down. So yes, I think that you would probably be the last bastion where this would happen. But this is how you do it. This is how you move things forward.
Looking at the situation today, there was recently the release of the Israeli-American hostage, an IDF soldier, Eden Alexander. Steve Witkoff reportedly promised that there would be the entry of aid into Gaza as a result of his freedom. Are you aware of any updates on this story? I know that they were supposed to get the aid in within 2 days of his release, and that has not happened, and I haven't seen anything since.
The whole notion that what is required in Gaza is aid is absurd. Think of the concentration camps during World War II. I mean, there was hunger, there was starvation, there was, horrible conditions, right? Can you imagine if somebody said, well, we need to send some trucks with aid? It was ludicrous. They need to be liberated. The regime that created those camps had to be completely dismantled, gotten rid of, and the camps need to be liberated. Gaza is the same thing. What the Gaza Strip needs is a concentration camp that needs to be liberated. There's over 2 million people there languishing, starving, dying of simple infectious diseases, of dehydration. I mean, it's absurd to think that a few trucks of aid are like an accomplishment. But because it's Palestine, and because the bar is always set so low, that if some organization manages to bring in 5 trucks or 10 trucks, it's like, oh my God, this is an enormous accomplishment. All this does is help the apartheid state continue to kill the Palestinians in the concentration camp. The only thing that matters is liberating the camp completely. It has to be dismantled. All the resources the Palestinians in Gaza need are right out there, minutes away by car. Palestine is a rich country. There's food, there's water, there's medicine, there are hospitals, everything you need, there are roads, everything you need is right out there. The problem is that they're being denied access. I mean, for decades, this is not new. The Gaza concentration camp was established in the early 50s. Since then, it's been a concentration camp, and it needs to be liberated. Should have been done then, but certainly now. And that's the only conversation that matters. So, of course, good for them. They liberated, they released one more person. But that's not the issue. It has to be liberated. Palestinian prisoners need to be liberated from the apartheid prisons. It has to be a package deal. Palestine needs to be liberated. That is the only thing that matters. So they allow a truck, they don't allow a truck. The reality in Rafah with thousands of trucks, with millions upon millions of dollars worth of people that donated, and everything is rotting there, of course, right? And who has control over whether or not these things are allowed to enter? The very genocidal regime that is committing the genocide. If they allow the Palestinians to die from hunger and dehydration and simple infections, they don't need to waste bullets. For them, it's a better deal that way anyway. And when you listen to the Hebrew press and to the discourse on that side, everybody thinks it's great. Let them die. Why are we allowing aid? We should not allow aid. And we're talking about a truck here, a truck there. The Gaza concentration camp, like the concentration camps, the Nazi concentration camp during World War II, needs to be liberated. The ghettos of what used to be the West Bank need to be liberated. The apartheid state has got to go. Every effort, every dollar, every waking minute needs to be dedicated to that. That is the only thing that matters. Even if they allow 100 trucks tomorrow, it's not going to solve the problem. It's still a concentration camp. In fact, it's a death camp. It's not a concentration camp. They're going to allow these people to die. And who has control over the content? The apartheid regime, the genocidal regime, is determining what content is going to be allowed to enter in the trucks, right? Mm-hmm. And when doctors come, there's all these wonderful, medical practitioners that try to go in to help. They're not allowed to bring hand soap. Why are they not allowed to bring hand soap? Because they want the infections to continue. You have to think of these details. And who determines what's allowed, how many doctors are allowed, how many nurses are allowed, what they're allowed to bring in their bags? The genocidal regime that is engaged in what? Genocide. So it doesn't make sense. Negotiating with them doesn't make sense. It has to be dismantled and liberated. Those are the only two terms I believe we need to be discussing. How we get to that as quickly as humanly possible to end the killing and the suffering of Palestinians.
Netanyahu is moving in now with the IDF, and they say that they're going to move forward with a plan to forcibly relocate Palestinians and initially put them into small clusters of prison clusters. I don't even know what to call it. And then eventually move forward with their forced relocation. Do you think that's a serious possibility that we could be looking at soon?
I mean, they are going in. I mean, with more forces. They have all these names for new operations every other day. They do have the ability to move the population within the concentration camp from one side to the other. They do not have the means or the ability to send them out somewhere. That's never going to happen. That is never going to happen. The question is how many are going to be killed, how many are going to die, in the process of this insanely cruel genocide. But removing the Palestinians from Palestine, removing 2 million Palestinians from Gaza, it's never going to happen. Mm-hmm. They will never go.
I don't have words for it anymore. Why do you think that at this late stage there are not more Congress people that are speaking out against it and trying to do something to I guess, mobilize some levers of power to change the situation. I mean, on the Republican side, you have maybe two people that said, I just don't want war with Iran, and that's all we get out of them. On the Democratic side, you get a lot of virtue signaling, but there's no real action.
Well, there's several answers to that. First of all, when has ever a Western power cared about white people killing people who are not white? It doesn't usually happen. They don't really care. They've never cared. I mean, this has been going on for almost 8 decades. They support it. They support it with money, with weapons, with diplomatic cover. They always have. And now we saw this charade in the Oval Office with the South African president about this genocide of white people. I mean, this is where we are. This is what America is. This is what the Western civilization is all about. It's about not caring when white people, or people of European descent, kill and destroy and steal from people who are people of color. So I think that's one big element. The other part of it is that Zionism is so entrenched in this country. People say, yeah, well, what if Trump decided to do this or that or the other? The system, Zionism is so entrenched here. It's in everything in America. Every aspect of America has a Zionist element to it. I mean, if you look at curriculum in just schools, elementary school, middle school, high school, it's a Zionist education system. If you look at culture, if you look at, philanthropy, you name it, there's Zionism everywhere, not to mention media and so on. So everything has to be dismantled in order for these people that are just a few blocks away from me here in Congress to rip down the Israeli flags that are all over the place, in their offices, and to start talking sense and start talking about the fact that it's wrong to kill people even if they're not white. It's a massive, that's a quantum leap, even for members of Congress who are not white, don't dare to say this. So that's the issue. Now, at some point they will. I mean, there's no question that at some point all these people are going to turn around and say, oh, of course we were always against it. We were always against Zionism. Oh, we always, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, it's going to take some time.
Even I think Rashida Tlaib has been the only principled one, and maybe I haven't looked at her full record. I don't know, but even people like AOC and the Justice Democrats, the squad, when they initially got elected, their whole MO was saying, we're not going to take any corporate PAC money, no military industrial complex money. They did take some money from liberal Zionist groups, but not from AIPAC. And they too seem to have bent the knee. I mean, is there no one left at this point that is an ally of organizations like yours and other allied organizations for the Palestinian resistance in Congress?
Other than Rashida and Cori Bush, who was a great ally, but she lost. Hopefully, she'll run and win again and win. I don't know. We'll see. But no. I mean, America is a Zionist country. It's a Zionist republic. It's Zionism is a big part of this country. And to say no to Zionists, to say no to Zionist money, to say no to the Zionist agenda, it doesn't matter if it's liberal Zionist or AIPAC. I mean, they're all part of this whole thing. It's going to take a while before that happens. I think when it does happen, I mean, what we saw, if we look, for example, at South Africa, one day it was okay to trade with South Africa, to visit, to have South African teams come and participate in things here. The next day it wasn't. The next day, if you hosted an event and invited a South African team, you would be penalized as the host. It was that extreme, that severe, as it should have been. But it of course took time. We have one of our members of our board from Connecticut who was part of the committee to get the state of Connecticut to divest from apartheid South Africa. It was back in 1981, which is really early. I mean, that's the process that needs to take place. But it's right now. They're not interested.
Well, hopefully they will be one day soon. I can't imagine leaving this earth with that on your conscience and having to answer to God with these crimes that blood is on all of their hands. So, Miko Peled, thank you so much for joining me today and all of your insight. Where should people follow along with you on social media, and where can they stay up to date with your organization in D.C.?
Well, I'm on all social media, Miko Peled. You can find me everywhere. PalestineHouseOfFreedom.com. We're on all social media. We're on Instagram. We have events here. Anybody who's in town in DC, come and visit us. We're here open for visitors. People do come and visit us. You can't miss the Palestinian flag on Pennsylvania Avenue. So just come and check us out. And again, the website has all the information. So PalestineHouseOfFreedom.com and my name, Miko Peled, just anywhere.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.